Husband secretly sold my $1 million diamond necklace and thought I'd never find out. I never thought the man I married would betray me like this, but he did. My husband stole my $1 million diamond necklace, emptied our bank accounts, and ran off to Bora Bora with his mistress thinking he could get away with it. But what he didn't know was that I had a plan of my own. I tracked him down, froze his accounts, and turned his dream vacation into his worst nightmare. Want to know how I brought him to his knees? Keep watching, because this is a revenge story you won't believe. I stared at my phone, my breath hitching in my throat as I read the message over and over again, each word slicing deeper into my chest. I'm leaving you, Amelia. I found someone new. Her name is Celeste, and she's everything you're not. We're moving to Bora Bora. Good luck with your miserable life. My hands trembled, my vision blurred. This had to be a joke. A cruel, twisted joke. But there it was, in black and white. A message so cold it felt like he had reached into my chest and ripped out my heart without a second thought. No explanation, no goodbye. Just a few careless words from the man I had loved, the man I had built a life with, the man who had promised me forever. And now he was gone. Just like that. I was sitting in my father's hospital room when the message came through. The steady beeping of machines was the only thing grounding me as my world fell apart. He lay there, frail, his once strong body reduced to skin and bones by the disease that had been eating away at him for years. I had spent the last few years balancing my life between work, my marriage, and taking care of him. And Nathan, my husband, the man I thought was my partner, had never made it a secret that he resented every second of it. He's not your responsibility, Amelia. He would snap whenever I canceled dinner plans or rushed home from work to check on Dad. You're wasting your time. He's old. You should be focusing on us. Maybe I should have seen this coming. Maybe I should have known that Nathan was never the kind of man to stand by me when things got tough. But I had been blinded by love, by the hope that one day he would grow into the man I thought he could be, the man I needed him to be. Instead, he had been planning his escape, waiting for the perfect moment to drop me like dead weight and run off to some tropical paradise with a woman he barely knew. The betrayal settled in, slow and suffocating. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. I couldn't break down. Not here, not now. My father needed me. He was still fighting, still holding on, and I couldn't let my own pain take me away from him. I forced a deep breath into my lungs, shoving my phone into my pocket. Nathan could wait. The pain could wait. Right now, my father was the only thing that mattered. It wasn't until hours later, when I finally left the hospital and stepped into the quiet, empty house, that the weight of it all truly sank in. The house we had built together, the life we had shared, now just an empty shell. I dropped my bag onto the couch, rubbing my temples as exhaustion settled over me. I needed a drink, something strong enough to burn away the ache in my chest. But as I turned toward the kitchen, something caught my eye. My jewelry box. It sat on my dresser exactly where I had left it. My heart pounded as I stepped closer, my fingers hovering over the delicate wood. I lifted the lid, my breath catching in my throat. There it was, my diamond necklace. The one my father had given me on my 30th birthday. The one he had saved for, planned for, cherished. It was worth over $1 million, but to me, it was priceless. A symbol of his love, a piece of him. But something was wrong. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. It looked the same. It felt the same. But when I ran my fingers along the clasp, my stomach twisted. It was lighter, cheaper. The faintest scratches marred the metal, ones that hadn't been there before. A sickening realization crashed over me like a tidal wave. This wasn't my necklace. Nathan hadn't just left me. He had stolen from me. My hands trembled as I dropped the fake onto the dresser, my mind racing. How long had he been planning this? How long had he been sneaking around, plotting his escape while pretending to be my husband? The thought of him standing here, in this very room, replacing my father's final gift to me with a worthless replica, made my stomach churn. I grabbed my phone, my fingers moving on instinct. My father had always been a cautious man, always thinking ahead, always planning for the worst. When he gave me the necklace, he had insisted on embedding a tracking chip inside it. "You can never be too careful, sweetheart," he had said with a knowing smile. At the time, I had laughed, thinking he was just being paranoid. But now, as I opened the tracking app and watched the screen load, I felt nothing but gratitude. My breath caught in my throat as a blinking red dot appeared on the map. The necklace wasn't in my house. It wasn't even in Nathan's suitcase. It was at a pawn shop, 3 miles away. I gritted my teeth, a fire igniting inside me, burning away the grief, the heartbreak, the pain. Nathan thought he could do this to me. He thought he could walk away with my father's necklace, with my money, with my dignity, and live happily ever after on some beach with his new toy. He had no idea who he was dealing with. I grabbed my keys, my hands steady, my mind clear for the first time in hours. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but one thing was certain. Nathan wasn't getting away with this. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white as I drove toward the pawn shop, my mind racing faster than the car. The anger that had been simmering beneath my skin since I saw Nathan's message was now a full-blown fire, burning away the last remnants of grief and confusion. He hadn't just left me, he had stolen from me. He had stood in our bedroom, taken the necklace my father gave me, and replaced it with a cheap, worthless replica. How long had he been planning this? Had he sat across from me at dinner, pretending to love me, while secretly plotting to rip my life apart? The thought made my stomach churn. I pulled into the parking lot of the pawn shop, the neon open sign buzzing faintly in the dim light. The place looked run down, with a cracked window and a flickering street lamp casting eerie shadows against the walls. My heart pounded as I stepped out of the car and pushed open the door, a bell jingling overhead. The man behind the counter barely looked up from the magazine he was reading. "Can I help you?" His voice was disinterested, his eyes still glued to the pages. I forced my voice to stay steady. "I think someone pawned a necklace here earlier today. A diamond necklace. It was stolen from me." That got his attention. His head snapped up, eyes narrowing as he studied me. "Lady, we don't deal in stolen goods." I pulled my phone from my pocket, showing him the tracking app. "Then explain why my security tracker led me straight to your store." His eyes flicked to the screen, then back to me. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then, with a sigh, he leaned on the counter. "A guy did come in this morning with a diamond necklace. Said he needed quick cash. Seemed jittery. Tall, dark hair. Nathan." My hands curled into fists at my sides. "Do you still have it?" He shook his head. "We flagged it as stolen when we ran it through our system. That means it's already been sent to the authorities." The room tilted slightly. I had spent the last hour convincing myself I'd walk in here and take back what was mine, but now it was gone. Not lost, but tangled in a legal process that could take months. "You need to contact law enforcement," the man said, his voice softer now, like he actually felt bad for me. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to nod. "Yeah, thanks." I turned on my heel and walked out, barely remembering how I made it back to my car before my legs gave out. My breath came in quick, uneven gasps, my chest tightening with frustration. Nathan had planned this. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't some heartbroken man who fell in love with someone else and left. He was a calculating, selfish bastard who had been draining me emotionally and financially for months. I needed to stop him. With shaking hands, I dialed the police. The next few hours passed in a blur, filling out reports, speaking with officers, explaining over and over again how my husband had stolen from me and disappeared. When I mentioned the necklace's value, they perked up, treating the case with more urgency. But it wasn't until I got home, exhausted and drained, that the real weight of it all settled on me. Nathan hadn't just taken my necklace. He had been planning this for a long time. I pulled out my laptop, something in my gut telling me to dig deeper. If he had stolen the necklace, what else had he done? What else had he taken? My fingers flew across the keyboard as I logged into our joint bank account. My stomach lurched the second the page loaded. Our savings were nearly gone. Tens of thousands of dollars had been transferred out over the past few months in small increments, just enough to avoid suspicion. Each transaction led to an offshore account. I clenched my teeth, my pulse hammering in my ears. Nathan hadn't just been planning to leave me, he had been robbing me this entire time. And I had been too blind, too trusting to see it. I opened my email, scrolling through months of transactions, looking for anything I had missed. And then I found it, an airline confirmation. Nathan hadn't just bought 2 tickets to Bora Bora. He had booked a luxury villa. My blood boiled. This wasn't some midlife crisis. This was a heist. I grabbed my phone and dialed the investigator the police had assigned to my case, my hands shaking with fury. "I have more information," I said the second he picked up. "Nathan has been funneling money into offshore accounts for months. He's using my money to fund his new life." Detective Chambers, the man who had taken my statement earlier, hummed on the other end. "That's good intel. Send me everything you have." I forwarded the files immediately. Every transaction, every withdrawal, every red flag I should have seen before. "We'll look into this," he said. "But Amelia, I need you to understand something. This isn't just a marital dispute anymore. This is fraud. If what you're saying checks out, your husband is looking at serious charges." "Good." I hung up and leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. I should have been exhausted. I should have been overwhelmed. But all I felt was a cold, hard determination settling into my bones. Nathan thought he could take everything from me, but he was about to learn just how wrong he was. Nathan thought he had everything figured out. He had the money, the girl, and the perfect escape. But what he didn't realize was that I was watching his every move. With his stolen fortune vanishing before his eyes and his mistress starting to doubt him, the pressure was mounting. So here's the question: when his cards start getting declined and his dream life crumbles, does he fight back or does he run? Comment 1 if you think he tries to fix it, and 2 if you think he panics and bolts. Let's see how many of you guess right. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Nathan's smug face lounging on a white sand beach, sipping cocktails bought with my money, living out his fantasy with my stolen necklace draped around his latest conquest's neck. The rage simmering beneath my skin made it impossible to rest. He thought he could just take everything from me and disappear. He thought I would roll over and cry, let him walk away without consequences. He had no idea who he was dealing with. At sunrise, I was already back at my desk, my laptop glowing in the dim light of my bedroom. I had spent half the night combing through our financials, looking for anything I had missed. And now, with a fresh cup of coffee and a mind too wired to think about anything but revenge, I was going to make sure there was nowhere for Nathan to hide. The first thing I did was call Detective Chambers again. He picked up on the second ring. "Amelia," he said, sounding surprisingly awake for this early in the morning. "I was just about to call you. We ran a preliminary check on those offshore accounts you flagged. You were right, your husband has been quietly moving money for months. It looks like he liquidated stocks, emptied joint savings, even rerouted some of his paycheck to an account under a shell corporation." I gripped my coffee mug, my jaw tightening. "So he's been planning this for a while, looks that way," Chambers confirmed. "The good news is, since he used your shared accounts to funnel a lot of this money, we have enough to freeze his assets. But that process takes time." I didn't have time. "How long?" I pressed. "A few weeks at best, longer if he has multiple accounts hidden offshore." That wasn't good enough. Nathan could burn through cash faster than anyone I knew. By the time the legal system caught up, he'd be on another island, sipping another drink, laughing at how easy it had been to rob me blind. I needed something faster. I thanked Chambers, then hung up and did something I never thought I'd have to do. I called my lawyer. Martin Holloway had been my father's attorney for years. handling everything from his estate planning to his business dealings. He was sharp, ruthless when necessary, and most importantly, he knew exactly how to play the legal game better than anyone I had ever met. "Amelia," he greeted, his voice warm but edged with curiosity. "What can I do for you?" I didn't bother with pleasantries. Nathan stole from me. He emptied our accounts, sold my father's necklace, and ran off to Bora Bora with some woman. The police are involved, but I need a way to stop him before he spends everything. There was a pause. Then, in that measured, calculated way he always spoke, Martin said, "I assume you have documentation to back this up?" "I do. Every withdrawal, every transfer, I have it all. Send it to me." I forwarded the files before he even finished speaking. Minutes later, I heard him exhale sharply through the phone. "This is substantial. Can we do anything about it?" "Yes," he said simply. "I'll file an emergency injunction to freeze any remaining assets under both of your names. If Nathan tries to withdraw anything, the bank will flag it. That should slow him down." I felt a flicker of hope. "And what about the offshore accounts?" Martin hesitated. "That's trickier. Legally, we can petition to have them frozen, but that depends on the cooperation of foreign authorities. However, if we can prove that the money was taken without your consent, especially if there's evidence of fraud, there's a stronger case for reclaiming it." Fraud. That word stuck in my head. Chambers mentioned something about that, I murmured. If Nathan forged my name on anything, that would be enough to charge him, right? "Absolutely," Martin confirmed. "Do you have access to any of the transactions he made in your name?" I pulled up my banking app, scrolling through the months of withdrawals. My eyes landed on something that made my stomach drop. A credit card application, under my name. I clicked on it, my heart racing as I scanned the details. Nathan had applied for a new card months ago using my personal information. I had never seen this, never signed for it. But here it was, approved, activated, and charged up to its limit. "Martin," I said, my voice sharper now. Nathan opened a credit card in my name. He forged my signature. There was a beat of silence, then a quiet chuckle. "That's identity theft. Now we have leverage." For the first time in days, I felt like I was winning. I hung up with Martin, my hand still shaking as I stared at the screen. Nathan had been so sure he was untouchable, so confident I would just crumble and let him take everything. He had no idea that every move he made left a trail. And now I was the one hunting him. I barely had time to process the weight of what I had just uncovered before my phone buzzed with another notification. I glanced down and felt my stomach lurch. A new transaction had appeared on the fraudulent credit card Nathan had opened in my name. $5,000 spent at a high-end boutique in Bora Bora. My pulse pounded in my ears as I clicked through the details, my fingers tightening around the phone. He wasn't just hiding, he was living it up, using my money, strolling into luxury stores, probably draping Celeste in silk and gold while I was back here picking up the shattered pieces of my life. I took a deep breath, forcing the rage down, sharpening it into something useful. If Nathan was still actively spending, that meant he hadn't realized yet that I was on to him, and that was an advantage I wasn't going to waste. I called Martin back immediately. "Another charge just hit," I said, skipping the greeting. $5,000 at a boutique in Bora Bora. "That's good," he said, voice calm and measured. "It means he hasn't caught on. I've already filed the emergency freeze on his domestic accounts. But if he's still accessing the offshore ones, we need to act fast." "Then let's move," I snapped. "Can we shut him down before he drains everything?" "Possibly," Martin said. "I'll coordinate with the banks and see if we can flag the transactions, but we might need more pressure." Pressure. I could do pressure. I hung up and immediately dialed Detective Chambers. When he answered, I didn't bother with small talk. "I found more proof," I said. "Nathan is actively committing identity theft. He's still using a card in my name. There's a fresh charge from an hour ago." That got his attention. "That helps our case," he said. "The fact that he's still spending means he's leaving a paper trail. We can push for a faster response from international authorities. I exhaled, gripping the edge of my desk. And how long before that response actually does something? I'll escalate it, he assured me. Meanwhile, the first suggests you keep an eye on his activity. If he starts moving again, we'll know before he does. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I'm already ahead of you. The second I hung up, I pulled up Nathan's social media. If there was one thing I knew about him, it was that he loved to show off. And sure enough, his latest post was timestamped just 20 minutes ago. A photo of him and Celeste, sitting on the deck of an overwater villa, champagne in hand. The caption reading, "Living the dream, no limits, no limits." The audacity of it made my blood boil. I clicked on Celeste's profile next, scrolling through her recent posts. She was just as bad as Nathan. Every picture was a carefully curated display of wealth and indulgence. A new handbag here, a private yacht there. But something caught my eye. A comment under her latest post. "Anonymous, I hope you're enjoying that vacation while you can. Heard authorities are looking for someone who fits your boyfriend's description." My breath hitched. Someone else was on to him. I clicked on the account, but it was private. No identifiable details. Was it someone he owed money to? A former friend? Or had news of his theft already started spreading? Either way, it meant one thing: Nathan's time was running out. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Chambers. Me. He's getting attention. Someone commented on his girlfriend's page, saying authorities are looking for him. His response came fast. "Chambers, that means we need to move faster. I'll update you soon." I dropped my phone onto the desk and exhaled shakily. This was happening. This was real. Nathan thought he had planned the perfect escape, but he had underestimated me. He had underestimated the fact that when someone takes everything from you, there's nothing left to lose. And I wasn't stopping until he had nothing left either. I barely let my phone rest before diving deeper into my investigation. If Nathan was still flaunting his stolen wealth online, then he was either too arrogant to think anyone could touch him, or too stupid to realize how much evidence he was leaving behind. Either way, his recklessness was my advantage. I wasn't going to waste it. I scrolled through his social media again, looking at his recent activity with a sharper eye. His posts weren't just random snapshots of paradise, they were a map. A breadcrumb trail leading straight to him. Every tagged location, every timestamp, every expensive drink he posed with told me exactly where he was and what he was doing. I switched over to Celeste's profile again, my jaw tightening as I took in the latest post, her lounging by an infinity pool, her sunglasses perched on her nose, a smug little smile on her lips. "Nathan spoils me too much," the caption read, followed by a string of heart emojis. My fingers hovered over the screen as I debated whether to message her directly. Would she even care? Would she delete everything if she knew I was watching? Or, better yet, what if she didn't know where the money was really coming from? That thought made me pause. What if Nathan had lied to her the way he had lied to me? What if she actually believed he had made his fortune, that this entire luxury escape was legitimate? And more importantly, what would she do when she realized it wasn't? I needed to find out. Instead of messaging her outright, I did something riskier. I created a fake account. A blank profile with a believable enough name. A few generic posts to make it look real. Then I sent her a message. "Hey girl, just a heads up. Someone's been saying some crazy stuff about Nathan online. Thought you should know." I held my breath as I hit send. Minutes passed. Then a notification. She had read it. My heart pounded as I watched the 3 little dots appear on the screen, signaling that she was typing. Then her response. "What kind of stuff?" I exhaled slowly, my fingers tightening around the phone. "That he stole money. That authorities are watching. I don't know if it's true, but I figured I'd warn you before things get messy." A long pause. Then, "Who are you?" I needed to be careful. "Just someone who's seen this kind of thing before. Look, if it's nothing, then great. But if it's true, you might want to ask where all that money's coming from." Another pause. Then, without another word, she blocked me. I stared at my phone, my stomach twisting. Either she was completely loyal to Nathan or I had just planted a seed of doubt. And if I knew anything about women like her, women who lived for attention, for luxury, for status, doubt was dangerous. I had to hope it would fester. Before I could overthink it, my phone rang. Chambers. You were right, he said the second I picked up. Nathan's offshore accounts are flagged. We've frozen what we could, but there's a delay in getting cooperation from Bora Bora's banking system. He's still spending, but those funds are about to run out. I closed my eyes, gripping the edge of my desk. And when that happens, he'll notice, Chambers said. And men like him, they panic. Good. Let him panic. Let him feel a fraction of what he had put me through. I hung up and refreshed Nathan's social media again. Nothing new yet, but it wouldn't take long. If Celeste confronted him, if his cards stopped working, if the walls started closing in, he'd slip up. And when he did, I would be waiting. I refreshed Nathan's social media for what must have been the 100th time, my pulse hammering in my ears. Still nothing. No new posts. No updates. Not even a cocky Instagram story showing off his lavish life. That wasn't like him. He lived for attention, for validation, for people fawning over his extravagant lifestyle. The silence wasn't just unusual, it was a sign that things were finally crumbling around him. And I had every reason to believe Celeste had something to do with it. I sat back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, replaying our last exchange in my mind. She had blocked me, yes, but not before I planted a seed of doubt. A woman like her, she thrived on luxury, but more importantly, she needed stability. She needed to know the money would keep flowing. And if she had even the slightest reason to believe Nathan was lying to her, she wouldn't sit quietly and wait for the truth to explode in her face. She'd dig. She'd confront him. And if there was one thing I knew about men like Nathan, it was that they crumbled under pressure. I grabbed my phone and checked my banking app again. The fraudulent credit card Nathan had been using was now declined. My heart slammed into my ribs. It's happening. I quickly dialed Martin, my lawyer, barely giving him a chance to answer before blurting. His card just got shut down. Does that mean the freeze went through? Martin let out a small, satisfied hum. It's possible, or he simply maxed it out. Either way, it's only a matter of time before he realizes he's trapped. Have you seen any movement from him? No, I admitted, gripping the phone tighter. But I think Celeste knows something's off. That works in our favor, he said. If she turns on him, he won't have many options left. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. And what about the offshore accounts? How long until they're completely frozen? That's more complicated, Martin said. But given the circumstances, I'd say within the next 24 hours. The authorities are cooperating, and once that final lock goes into place, he'll be unable to access anything. 24 hours. That was all I needed. I hung up, my mind racing. I imagined Nathan in Bora Bora, reaching for his wallet, that smug look on his face morphing into confusion when the transaction failed, then panic when the next one failed, and the next, and the next. I could almost hear the argument brewing between him and Celeste. She'd demand answers. She'd accuse him of lying. And knowing Nathan, he'd try to gaslight her, convince her it was just a banking error, a temporary hold. But Celeste wasn't stupid, at least. Not stupid enough to stick around if she thought she was being dragged into a financial disaster. And that was exactly what I was counting on. Hours passed, and still, no sign of him online. No grand speeches, no luxurious dinners, no updates about their dream life in paradise. The silence was suffocating. Then finally a notification. Celeste had updated her Instagram. I clicked on it so fast, my fingers nearly fumbled the phone. My breath caught as I took in the image, a boomerang of her packing a suitcase, captioned with a single cryptic message. Sometimes you realize too late who you can't trust. I exhaled sharply, gripping the phone. She was leaving him. My lips curled into a slow, satisfied smile. This was it. The beginning of the end. Nathan's house of cards was finally collapsing, and the best part? He still had no idea it was me pulling the strings. I could feel it happening. The walls were closing in around Nathan, squeezing him tighter with every second that passed. Celeste was leaving him. His accounts were frozen. His credit cards were useless. And the best part? He had no idea it was me pulling the strings from thousands of miles away. I had spent years watching him manipulate people, watching him twist the truth until even I questioned reality. But this time, he was the one unraveling. I refreshed my phone again, waiting for any sign of movement. His social media was still silent, which only confirmed what I already knew. Nathan was in full-blown panic mode. No boasting, no luxury dinners, no smug captions about living his best life, just silence. Then, finally, something new. A tagged photo. I clicked on it instantly, my heart hammering. It was a blurry image taken at a high-end resort in Bora Bora, but I could see him clear as day, standing near the front desk, arguing with an employee. His face was twisted in frustration, his hand gripping his phone so tightly, it looked like he wanted to snap it in half. The caption underneath made my stomach tighten with satisfaction. Some guy at the resort lost his mind when his card got declined. Rich people problems, I guess. I let out a slow, steady breath, my fingers curling around my phone. It's happening. I imagined him standing there, his confidence cracking, his voice rising in frustration as the front desk clerk politely but firmly told him his payment wasn't going through. Nathan had never been good at handling pressure. He could lie, he could manipulate, but the moment something was out of his control, he crumbled. I checked my messages. Nothing from Chambers yet, but I knew it was only a matter of time before I got the call I had been waiting for. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, letting it all sink in. Nathan had thought he could take everything from me, my father's necklace, my money, my dignity, and disappear. He had envisioned himself lying on a sun-soaked beach, sipping cocktails with his new toy, without a care in the world. He had thought I would break, that I would sit here, drowning in heartbreak while he lived out his fantasy. But instead, he was stranded, broke, and alone. And I was the one sipping my coffee, watching it all unfold from the comfort of my own home. It wasn't enough, though. Not yet. I needed to see him fall, completely. So I waited. And then, just as I knew it would, my phone rang. Chambers. I answered before the first ring even finished. Tell me. There was a pause, then a satisfied hum. You're going to like this. I sat up, gripping the phone tighter. What happened? Nathan tried to book a last-minute flight out of Bora Bora, one-way ticket. He must have realized his accounts were frozen and was trying to get ahead of it. I closed my eyes, smiling to myself, and the local authorities were already watching him. He's officially flagged. They intercepted him at the airport. A rush of adrenaline shot through me. So, he's in custody? They're holding him for questioning, Chambers confirmed. The fraud charges on your end, combined with the flagged offshore accounts, are enough to detain him while they investigate further. I exhaled slowly, my hands shaking with exhilaration. What happens next? Well, that depends, he said. If everything lines up the way we expect, the Maldivian authorities will push for extradition. Once he's back here, he'll be facing multiple charges: identity theft, fraud, and theft of high-value property. My father's necklace. The thought of it still made my stomach twist. That necklace wasn't just worth $1 million, it was priceless to me. It was a piece of my father, a connection to him that I wasn't willing to lose. Do you think we'll get it back? I asked, my voice quieter now. Chambers hesitated. It's already flagged as stolen property, so once we track down where he sold it, we'll have a better idea. I clenched my jaw. I need it back, Chambers. I know, he said, and I promise we're doing everything we can. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Okay, I'll keep you updated, he assured me. I hung up and let out a shaky breath. Nathan was caught. His money was gone. His new life was over before it even began. And now it was just a matter of time before he was dragged back to face the consequences. I had won, but I wasn't finished yet. I barely had time to savor the moment before my phone buzzed with another notification. Not from Celeste this time, but from a travel forum I had set to track Nathan's name. My pulse spiked as I clicked on it. A new post had surfaced, buried under other vacation-related chatter, but it was there someone complaining about a disruptive American man at a resort in Bora Bora, causing a scene over a billing error. The user had even attached a blurry photo, but I didn't need clarity to know it was him. That stiff posture, the way he leaned aggressively toward the resort staff, the tension practically radiating from his body, it was Nathan, and he was losing it. I smirked, imagining the moment unfolding in real time. Him handing over his black card, expecting the effortless transaction he had grown used to, only for the clerk to shake their head, politely informing him that his payment was declined. He would try again, force a smile, play it cool, but then his other card wouldn't work either. And then another. The realization would hit slow, like a crack spidering across glass. His money was gone. His escape plan was crumbling. And Celeste? She was already packing her bags, getting ready to leave him behind. I refreshed my banking app for the 100th time that day, double-checking what I already knew. His offshore accounts were frozen. The last transactions on the fraudulent credit card had bounced. There was no way out for him, no safety net, no more stolen money to fund his fantasy. My phone rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. Chambers. "I take it you've seen the latest?" he asked, his voice laced with amusement. "I have," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Sounds like things are unraveling exactly as planned." "They are," he confirmed. "We got confirmation that Nathan tried to book another hotel under Celeste's name. I'm guessing he thought he could smooth things over with her if he put everything in her name instead. But she declined. She checked out of their villa an hour ago and flew out on the earliest flight back to the States." I let out a slow breath, letting the satisfaction sink in. "So she left him?" "Looks like it," Chambers said. "And if I had to guess, she probably didn't go quietly." No, she wouldn't have. Women like Celeste weren't the type to accept financial ruin without a fight. If she had even a shred of self-preservation, she would have torn into him the second she realized he had no money left. "What happens now?" I asked. "Well," Chambers said, a smirk clear in his tone, "Nathan tried to withdraw cash from a local bank earlier today. And guess what?" I smiled. "Let me guess it didn't go through." "Bingo," he said. "Bank flagged his account and notified the local authorities. They haven't made a move yet, but they're watching him. And considering he just lost access to all his funds, my guess is he's going to make a very desperate, very stupid decision soon." I exhaled, my mind racing through the possibilities. Nathan was out of options. His money was gone. His mistress had abandoned him. He was stuck on an island with no resources, no allies, and now a growing suspicion that something much bigger was happening around him. He would try to run, to scramble for whatever scraps of cash he could find, to weasel his way into one last escape. But it wouldn't work, because no matter what he did next, I had already anticipated it. I was 3 steps ahead, and he was already trapped. I could feel it, the tension in the air, the slow but inevitable collapse of Nathan's world. He was spiraling, and I was the one who had set the trap. Every single move he made only tightened the noose around his neck. His cards were useless. His offshore accounts were frozen. His mistress had abandoned him. And now, with the authorities watching his every step, it was only a matter of time before he cracked. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers against the armrest as I refreshed the travel forum again. More comments had appeared under the post about the angry American at the Bora Bora resort. "Saw him at the bank earlier. Guy was losing his mind. They wouldn't let him withdraw cash. Looked like he was ready to punch someone. Karma is real. I saw him storming out of the hotel this morning with nothing but a backpack. Maybe his sugar mama kicked him out?" I smirked. Not maybe. Definitely. Celeste had left him, just as I knew she would. She wasn't the type to stick around when the money dried up. She had probably gone through her own version of shock, denial, and rage before deciding that whatever connection she thought she had with Nathan wasn't worth being broke over. And Nathan? He must have been blindsided. He had probably thought he could charm his way out of it, lie his way back into her good graces, convince her that this was just a temporary setback. But Celeste wasn't stupid vain, maybe, but not stupid. The second she realized she was standing in the middle of a sinking ship, she had jumped. And now Nathan was sinking alone. My phone buzzed again. A text from Chambers. Nathan is trying to book a last-minute flight. I sat up straighter, my pulse kicking up. Where to? I typed back. Anywhere. He's desperate. Just got flagged at the airport. Authorities are closing in. I exhaled, my fingers tightening around the phone. It was happening. Nathan was trying to run. He must have spent the last few hours frantically searching for any way out, calling banks, trying different credit cards, maybe even attempting to convince Celeste to help him. And when all of that failed, when he finally realized that there was no fixing this, he did what he always did. He ran. Only this time, he wouldn't get far. I imagined him at the airport, standing at the check-in counter, panic creeping into his voice as the agent explained that his ticket was flagged, that his payment had been declined, that there was a hold on his passport. The walls were closing in, and for the first time in his life, there was no easy way out. I checked my phone again, waiting for the inevitable update. My breath felt shallow, my body tense with anticipation, and then there it was. We got him. I stared at the message for a long moment, the weight of it settling over me. Nathan was in custody. He wasn't on a beach sipping expensive cocktails. He wasn't basking in his stolen wealth. He wasn't laughing at my expense, thinking he had won. He was being escorted out of an airport in handcuffs, and I had done it. I let out a slow, steady breath, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, closure. Nathan had spent years thinking he was untouchable, that he could take whatever he wanted without consequence. He had lied, manipulated, stolen, and for so long, he had gotten away with it. But now he was finally facing the reality he had so desperately tried to avoid. And me? I was free. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one suffering. I wasn't the one cleaning up his mess, sacrificing my happiness to keep everything together. I had fought back. I had taken control. And now, I was the one watching him fall. I got up from my chair, stretching my arms, feeling lighter than I had in months. There was still more to do: legal proceedings, trials, recovering what was mine. But for now, I let myself enjoy this moment. Nathan was finished, and I was just getting started. The moment I got confirmation that Nathan was in custody, something inside me shifted. The rage, the exhaustion, the weight of everything he had done to me, it all loosened its grip. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. Really breathe. He was no longer a shadow lurking over my life, stealing my peace, my money, my future. He was behind bars, and no amount of manipulation or charm was going to get him out of this one. I sat in silence for a long time, my phone still in my hand, the message from Chambers glowing on the screen. We got him. Simple, direct, final. I let out a slow breath, my fingers tightening around the device before finally setting it down. It was over. But even as relief flooded through me, I knew this wasn't the end. There was still work to do: recovery, legal battles, hearings. Nathan had taken more than just my money. He had tried to strip me of my dignity, my security, my ability to trust. And while I had won this war, there were still battles ahead. The first was getting back my father's necklace. I called Chambers again, barely giving him a chance to greet me before I asked, "Any updates on the necklace?" He sighed, the kind of sigh that told me things weren't moving as fast as I wanted them to. "We're tracking it," he said. "From what we've gathered, Nathan pawned it before he left, but the piece was flagged as stolen almost immediately. It's in holding now, part of the evidence being processed. I closed my eyes, gripping the bridge of my nose. So I can't get it back yet. Not just yet, he admitted. But it's not lost, Amelia. That's the important thing. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Okay, I could be patient. I had already waited this long. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and legal proceedings. Nathan had no choice but to face his charges. And for once in his life, there was no one left to bail him out. Celeste had long since abandoned him, completely scrubbing any trace of their paradise life from her social media. No posts, no mentions, no tearful confessions. She had walked away like he never even existed. I didn't hear from her, and I didn't expect to. Nathan's trial moved forward faster than I had anticipated, the mountain of evidence against him impossible to ignore. Fraud, identity theft, grand larceny. He had dug his own grave, and the judge had no sympathy. When the final verdict came, I was sitting in the back of the courtroom, watching as his world shattered. Sentenced. Years behind bars. He looked at me once, just once, as they led him out of the courtroom. His face was pale, his usual arrogance gone. For the first time in his life, he looked powerless, and I didn't feel sorry for him, not even a little. I walked out of that courtroom feeling lighter than I had in years. That night, I visited my father. He was asleep when I arrived at the hospital, his breathing steady, his face peaceful in a way that made my chest tighten. I sat beside him, taking his hand in mine, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. "It's done, Dad," I whispered. "He's gone. He can't take anything from me anymore." I squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin, the steady pulse beneath my fingers. He didn't respond, he rarely did these days, but it didn't matter. He was here, and that was enough. When I finally got the call that my father's necklace was being returned to me, I felt a lump rise in my throat. I picked it up from the investigator's office, turning it over in my hands, feeling the cool weight of it against my palm. It was real. It was home. That night, I sat in my bedroom, the necklace resting against my collarbone, a reminder of everything I had fought for, everything I had reclaimed. And for the first time in years, I felt whole again. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was free. And just like that, it was over. Nathan was left stranded, broke, and completely alone while I got my justice. He thought he could take everything from me and live happily ever after, but instead, he ended up in handcuffs, with nothing but regrets. So, what do you think? Did he deserve what he got? Would you have done the same if you were in my shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm dying to know. And if you love a good revenge story, make sure to like and subscribe, because trust me, this isn't the only time karma has come knocking. Trust is valuable, but blind trust is dangerous. I learned the hard way that protecting yourself, your finances, your identity, your future is not paranoia, it's necessity. Always pay attention to red flags, secure your assets, and never assume someone has your best interests at heart just because they once said they loved you. In America, financial independence isn't just about success, it's about survival. If someone tries to take everything from you, fight back. Use the law, use your knowledge, and never let anyone make you feel powerless. I took control, and so can you.